Hello all. Today let's see a program on generating a Fibonacci series, which is most commonly asked interview questions when you're attending interviews on Python programming. So first let us see what is a Fibonacci series. Fibonacci series is something which starts with 0, 1 and the third element in the Fibonacci series is obtained by the summing of last two elements. At any point in the series, the nth element would be the sum of its last two elements. So here the third element would be sum of 0, 1, which is 1, and the next element would be sum of last two elements, which is 0, 1, 1, which is 1 plus 1, 2, and the next element would be sum of 2 and 1, 3, 3 plus 2, 5, 5 plus 3, 8, 8 plus 5, 13, 21, and so on. So this is how the Fibonacci series looks like. So now let's see a logic on how to implement a logic to generate the Fibonacci series. So let's define a function fib which takes the input as n. Here n is nothing but which represents the length of the Fibonacci series. So it generates this function generates a series until the nth element. So it's always a best practice to write the logic within the function. So the first two elements would be 0 and 1. So I'm taking two variables a comma b and initializing it to 0, 1, and the sum, the third element would be the sum of a and b. So I'm taking a variable as s and initializing it to 0 for the time being. So let me make it much easier to understand. The first element would be a, second element would be b, the third element would be s, and yeah. So let's take a for loop here. I'm taking a for loop here which runs for n times for I in range of n. So n represents the length of the series. So this loop runs from 0 to n minus 1, that is for n times. So first we'll be calculating the third element. So sum of the first two elements was s equal to a plus b. So now we got the third element, which is s, and the next iteration, now the b value would be stored in a would be the b in the last iteration would be a in the current iteration, and the third element which is generated in the last iteration would be b in the next iteration, and the s would be the third element. So this is how it continues for each iteration. So b value would be stored in a, the b value in the last iteration would be stored in a for the current iteration, the s value in the last s value would be stored in b. So sum of these two values generate the next element in the series. So now we got the sum and we're storing b value to a, assigning the b value to a, and assigning some value s value to b. So at the end of each iteration, so let's take a list which will contain the Fibonacci series. So the since the first two values would be 0 and 1, so we are initializing a list with a comma b. So 0 and 1 would be the first two elements of the list. So at the end of each iteration, we would be appending the sum to the list. So fib dot append of s, appending sum to the list. So finally this function would return the Fibonacci series, this fib return a list which contains a Fibonacci series. So since we are returning this function, since this function returns a value, we have to store the result of this function in a variable. We have to assign it to a variable. So I have created a variable fib underscore series, and which stores the value of that is written by this function. So I'm calling this function fib of which takes value. So this value, let's say, instead of making a hard-coded value, let's make it a dynamic variable. So the length of the variable, I'm making it a dynamic variable with the help of input function, so that we can, it asks for a user input at runtime. So enter the series length. Now we got the Fibonacci series for the function, and finally we will be printing the series. So we are done with the implementation. Now let's run the code and see how it works. See, it asks for the user input, so it asks to specify the length of the series. So I'm giving the input as 5. So it has generated the five values in the series. So here so we have initiated the list with 0 and 1 values. So when I have specified 5 as the length of the series, it will generate the next 5 elements next to 0 and 1. Apart from 0 and 1, it will generate 5 elements in the series. So let me execute with another input, specifying the value as 10. See, it has generated 10 values apart from 0 and 1. So yeah, this is how we implement. This is a simple program to generate a Fibonacci series using Python. So, yeah. Let's meet in another video. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.